Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Standing on business.
Standing on business.
Stand on business.
What's up, Brownies? Welcome back for another installment in the Standing on Business series. And that's exactly what people are doing after hearing the news of OJ's passing. So we're going to get into the real OG in this situation, which is going to be Fred Goldman. But for now, we're going to talk about what kicked this whole video off and what inspired it, which was the fact that Caitlyn Jenner thought that it was a good idea to take to social media after the announcement had been made to type "good riddance." So you have Caitlyn and others delighting in his demise because they think that he caused the ending of someone else's life, even though he's been acquitted. But some people took to social media just to basically remind Caitlyn, like, not so fast, because your hands are not clean either. And how you were in a situation where you were accused of something, and the privilege that you have is what got you out of your situation, very much so similar to him, as the fact that his celebrity status and wealth played a large part in him being acquitted for what he was accused of, right? What I want to do is not only give you all a reminder of exactly what happened in Caitlyn's case, but also the remarks and the type of time that she was on in interviews after that incident, and then see if she has a leg to stand on.
Overnight, Bruce Jenner, along with 50 other unnamed defendants, hit with a wrongful death lawsuit stemming from a 4-car collision which 69-year-old Kim Howe in February. The siblings say they suffered enormous damages and losses and alleged negligent, careless, and reckless behavior, specifically citing California's speeding law. Officials say the former Olympian's Cadillac crashed into the back of Howe's car after a Prius in front of Howe's car slowed down. The impact possibly moving Howe's car into the path of an oncoming Hummer, which crashed head-on into Howe's car.
So that was just a reminder of exactly what happened. So she's saying that her situation was different because one was an accident and the other one had a lot of brutality involved. And also, he joked about the fact that he could have gotten away with it, right? But if you're feeling justified because of what he said, I want to play this throwback video of what she was talking about and worried about when somebody else had lost their life in her accident.
What do you remember about the accident?
Very little. I remember it happening, and that's about it.
Seems like the worst case scenario, you could spend a year in a county jail. Have you been able to even think about that?
The media wants that picture, don't they? That is the worst case scenario. I don't know. We'll see. The men's county jail. It is an enormous problem that they would put trans women in a men's county jail. Yeah. But those are things we're looking into.
No, Caitlyn, I actually have to disagree with you. The worst case scenario actually would have been what happened to Kim Howe, which is she's no longer here. That's the worst case scenario. And it really doesn't take much for you to have some sort of decorum and to express remorse instead of making this situation about yourself. And instead focus more on owning the part of it that you did play, especially when you know that you're rich and white and famous and that you were going to get off anyway. Let's be for real. You didn't give going to prison a second thought. So you can just make it about the victims in this moment. I thought that was tacky. See, in actuality, you both wanted to shift energy and get some sympathy for what you were going through. But the real victims in this case were Ron Goldman and Kim Howe. And you all were the catalysts or the causes of death in some way, shape, form, or fashion, whether you got convicted or had to do jail time for it or not. And I guess in Caitlyn's situation, she's trying to convince us, don't confuse my actions with Bruce because y'all are confusing what Bruce did with what I did. Just like we're confusing your friendship, I guess. Because what we're trying to figure out is, when did you have so much disdain for him? And when did you start hating him? When it looks like y'all used to be real chummy back in the day. And we're even helping Kris Jenner rewrite history as if it was a trial that broke up her Kardashian marriage and that she was always anti-OJ. But this interview kind of implies something different. Let's take a listen.
Chris really was a close friend of Nicole's. This is Chris and then husband Bruce Jenner talking to Inside Edition about the case during the trial, where they were regular spectators.
I think that this has been a really tough year, for, tough 15 months for all of us. And not only have we lost Nicole, we've lost OJ too.
Chris was actually pregnant with Kendall Jenner, now a world-famous model.
How long?
6 more weeks.
6 more weeks.
6 weeks as a little girl.
And here she is. Chris shared this portrait of her newborn daughter. Kendall's middle name? It's actually Nicole, a tribute to Kris Jenner's slain best friend.
I have a real problem with people trying to rewrite history and this notion that Chris was always anti-OJ, and that interview says something a little different or implies something different. And also that the trial was the thing that ended your marriage. Your marriage was already on shaky ground, so that might have just been the final stage, but that marriage was already on its last leg. You all were drug-fueled sex addicts and swingers. There was no loyalty there. Y'all's lifestyle was one of hedonism and debauchery. That's what ended your marriage. You and Nicole and the rest of you all's friend groups were the original city girls of Brentwood all the way back then. Going and being loose before, during, and after your marriages. And her continuing to do so after her marriage is what led to her demise. She played her part in what happened to her. We're not going to turn her into some sort of saint either. And Faye Resnick, for as trifling as she is, she spilled all of the tea. And whereas everybody was talking about how trifling she was for writing the book and publishing the diaries and all of that, nobody said that everything that she said was completely false. You were just embarrassed in the backlash for the truth actually coming out. And even with that, you all did not stop your lifestyles. Now, if you look at all of the different relationships and marriages and situationships between Robert Kardashian, Kris Kardashian Jenner, and Bruce Jenner, there was a whole lot of overlap and a whole lot of lying going on. Sometimes with people's weddings literally being days before the ink is even dry on the first divorce, which means that you all were sleeping together and you were together before during the previous marriage. And Bruce has a nasty habit of that, and then escaped it all of the lies, all of the different marriages and baby mamas where you lied to these women about who you really were and your true intentions, and then escaped all of that by going and turning yourself into a woman. Let's be clear. There is no moral high ground to be had on anybody, any one of you all. And as far as Nicole, you set out, we have the documentaries are over 2 decades old now, that where your ex-teachers and classmates from high school said that was your goal. You were very brazen about stating the fact that your goal in life was to marry well, and you did that, but you did so at the expense of somebody else's marriage. You had no problem being with a man that was basically twice your age and letting him be your sugar daddy, knowing full well that he was married with children, not 2, but 3, because we forget the third one was busy drowning in a pool in 1979 while he was out gallivanting anyhow with you. And then, yes, after the divorce was final, he put his black wife and his black children out like yesterday's trash. So you saw a man that did not value the sanctity of marriage. He was already an adulterer. And not only was he not a good husband, he wasn't a good father, because look at how he let his first children suffer while he was spoiling you. Speaking of which, let me pause right here for a moment. With black women knowing that this man got off on a technicality first and foremost, and then how he treated his first black wife and his black children, explain this interview to me.
A lot of people, a lot of women, this is a question that a lot of black women want me to ask you, so I'm going to ask it. They want to know, are you ever going to date sisters again?
I tell you. I'll tell you an interesting thing. In the last 5 years, I've gone out with 2 sisters and 1 Hispanic girl.
Okay.
Nobody ever writes about that.
So, child, y'all didn't even wait until he was in the ground to start rewriting history and deifying him. Y'all were doing that just a few years after the trial. Anyway, back to Nicole. You finally got him to marry you by being knocked up. We can do the simple math. That first baby came 7 to 8 months after that wedding, which means that you were pregnant during it. Because after all, why did it take so many years after he was already divorced for you all to get married? You trapped that man with a baby. You were playing the long con, and then you had to suffer all along in order to keep and maintain that money. And all of your friends and family members looked the other way and didn't pay any attention to your bruises as long as they could still be on the yacht and as long as they could borrow money from him for their business ventures and live the high life. Nobody was concerned about your health and safety and well-being, and not even you. That includes you. Until you just couldn't take it anymore and you had done your time and you wanted to divorce him and still continue to live off of his money, which you did. Then sleeping with his friends, flaunting your sex life in front of him while you're still living off of him. And after this man had told you to stop doing what you were doing and what he was going to do to you if you didn't. And my problem with that is you were so busy living this lavish lifestyle that you didn't think about what it's doing, that you have 2 children now with this violent man as their father. As long as you were getting what you wanted out of the deal and seeing this young, fine waiter and having him drive your fancy car around and visit you at your home and all of this other stuff when that man had already told you to stop doing that. So what happened to you was not right. And yes, it was a tragedy. But let's not act like every event that happened to you in your short-lived life was not one that you didn't set in motion and get the ball rolling on. You died the way that you lived, in scandal. And the real victims here, once again, Ron Goldman. And he lost his life from being over there at your house. That man had already told you what he was going to do to you. And you carried on, flaunted it, as if you were daring him to do what he had already said. And you knew it. All of your family knew it, and all of your friends, including Kris Jenner, knew it. Spare me. So his first wife and his black children, right along with his biracial children, these are the actual victims in this situation, along with Ron Goldman, which brings me to the real OG of this situation. Because when they asked Fred, his father, how do you feel about the news of OJ passing, he was real clear when he said, I don't find it as some big loss. Because that man still owes us. That wrongful death lawsuit that they were supposed to be getting the millions that they were awarded by the courts, they only got a little over $100,000 of that. And so the OG Fred Goldman is saying, not so fast, you still owe me. So what I'm going to have to do now that you're gone, because I know they're getting ready to try to pull a fast one with any money that he did have or anything that was left of his estate, you're going to want it to go to your children or grandchildren or all of that. But let's not forget, I'm still owed. And OJ's death was nothing more than a reminder of just how long I have been without my son. That's the victim here, Ron Goldman. Those are the victims here, his children, because heaven forbid there is something left of the estate. These children don't look like they're doing well. Daughter looked like she walking around in Target clothes. Who has anything left to give? So for all of the money and all of the fame, what benefit did OJ have to anybody in his life? What is his real legacy now that he's gone? And baby, shout out to Fred for standing on business by saying, listen, dead or alive, whether your children get to be left with anything or not, you still owe us. F you, pay me. And he's standing on that. And I stand with him on that. Because Ron Goldman's death always got overshadowed by talking about the Simpsons' foolishness. So condolences to the Goldmans and to the Simpson families.
So you